Сайн байцгаана үзэгчдээ. Бид онцлог зочны ярилцлага.
Good evening. We're at the Embassy of Mongolia in Kuwait. You're watching a special interview with the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Mongolia to Kuwait, Mr. Chintushig.
Chintushig ураад байна.
First of all, thank you for accepting our invitation for an interview. It's been already 45 years since Mongolia established diplomatic relations with the state of Kuwait. As this year marks the anniversary of diplomatic relations, how would you evaluate the history and current status of bilateral relations between the two countries?
Thank you for your invitation. Mongolia established diplomatic relations with the state of Kuwait on June 17, 1975. Until the 1990s, relations or cooperation between our two countries was quite stagnant. On August 2, 1990, neighboring Iraq conducted a military operation against the state of Kuwait and invaded the country. Mongolia was one of the first countries that actively criticized and disapproved of the invasion of Kuwait and issued an official statement on it. After that, in 1995, Kuwaiti Emir Sheikh Jabr al-Ahmad al-Sabah paid a special visit to Mongolia. During his visit and dialogues, he expressed gratitude to Mongolia for issuing a statement supporting the independence of Kuwait against an Iraqi invasion. As a result of the visit, in 1996, administrators from the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development paid a visit to Mongolia, noting that a positive environment for boosting mutual relations had been created. Between 1996 and 2000, the Kuwait Fund for Arab Economic Development provided soft loans to Mongolia for funding the construction of paved roads between Darkhan and Irtent and the Irtent-Bolgan and Bolgan-Taralan highways. In addition, the state of Kuwait supported the construction of the Taisher hydroelectric power plant in Gawalta province by providing a $19.7 million soft loan. In recent decades, the state of Kuwait has provided both grants and soft loans. As of now, a total of $79.2 million in soft loans has been provided. In 2018, a renovation project for Khinty Province's Underhan Airport has received $3.5 million in soft loan funding. In 2017, Kuwait provided $8 million for the construction of a burn center, $500,000 for resilience assistance in drought-affected areas, and $300,000 for the construction of 35 residential complexes for people in Baingulgi affected by flooding. In total, Kuwait has provided Mongolia with around $17.6 million in grant aid. For the last few years, the two countries have been attaching great importance to mutual relations and cooperation. As a bright example, the governments of the two countries hold intergovernmental commission meetings, and our ministries of foreign affairs hold consultative meetings on a regular basis.
Recently, a Mongolian delegation led by the Secretary of State of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tavasarum, paid a working visit to the state of Kuwait. What was on the agenda and what was the outcome of this visit?
The Secretary of State conducted consultative meetings in three countries: Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. It was the second consultative meeting between the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia and Kuwait, and the first consultative meetings between Bahrain and Qatar. The agenda included an evaluation of the current status of relations between the countries and identifying the future direction of cooperation. Of course, the issues and dialogues vary depending on the country. For example, we plan to develop cooperation with Bahrain mostly in the banking and finance sectors, while activities for the diplomatic relations anniversary celebration were discussed with Kuwait. As Qatar also has a fund for development assistance, we discussed the possibility of cooperation with the Qatar Fund in the future.
What do you think are the main sectors for Mongolia and Kuwait cooperation?
Of course, political relations between the two countries are highly developed. Economic and trade relations leave much to be desired. From our perspective, Mongolia receives soft loans and grant aid often. But I want to highlight that we cannot perceive that Mongolia is only taking aid and grants from its counterpart. Kuwait also has its own soft power policy. Therefore, they invest in the development of its partner countries by issuing soft loans and grants. Of course, they will look at the country's credit history and reliability. Before the 1990s, as a developed country, the state of Kuwait used to support its neighboring developing Arabian countries. After 1992's invasion and conflict, the state authorities started strengthening the country's sovereignty by expanding its foreign relations with countries outside of its region. And that's how they have started investing in developing countries on other continents.
We understand that external relations policies play an important role. Today, how many diplomatic missions are operating in Kuwait?
In total, 110 diplomatic missions and embassies operate in Kuwait. It neighbors countries like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, and maintains a policy of neutrality. Those three countries compete for dominance in the Gulf region. The state of Kuwait maintains more of a policy of neutrality and plays the role of mediator between conflicting parties. Mongolia cooperates with Kuwait within the framework of its Northeast Asian cooperation policy. The country is interested in boosting its relations with Northeast Asian countries. For example, China is Kuwait's biggest export partner, and the Republic of Korea is considered the second major export partner. The two major exporters of Kuwaiti oil products are located in the region. Mongolia is part of this region. Also, it's one of the countries that the Kuwaiti Emir likes to travel to.
There are, of course, trade and economic ties between the two countries. How do you see the potential to increase Mongolian export to Kuwait? What kind of Mongolian products have more potential to enter the Kuwaiti market?
Currently, the trade turnover leaves much to be desired. In 2019, Kuwaiti export to Mongolia reached $110,000, while Mongolia exported $36,000 worth of products. Mainly, it was Mongolian cosmetic product manufacturers that want to test the soil in the Arabian market. In general, we have the potential to export non-mining sector products like meat, cashmere, and cosmetic products.
What are the outcomes of Kuwaiti soft loans and grants? What impact have they had on life in Mongolia?
For example, the Tashur hydroelectric power plant is operating in the Gobi Alta province. It connects the two province centers and provides electricity to several zones.
Kuwait deposits 10% of its income generated from oil sales into a special state fund. How do they manage their sovereign wealth fund?
The Kuwait Investment Authority manages Kuwaiti's sovereign wealth fund, specializing in local and foreign investment. It's the fifth largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, with assets exceeding more than $600 million. It manages two separate wealth funds, the Kuwait General Reserve Fund and the Kuwait Future Generation Fund. The Kuwait General Reserve Fund is financed mostly by state revenue, while the Kuwait Future Generation Fund is financed by 10% of state oil revenue. The General Reserve Fund funds the state budget, while 10% from the operations of the Kuwait Investment Authority also contributes to the Kuwait Future Generations Fund. The Kuwait Investment Authority is a managing body specializing in local and foreign investment. It buys 5 to 10% shares of major international companies and makes safe, low-risk investments. For example, it buys government bonds and fixed assets. Kuwait's main advantage is that if oil prices drop on international market, the state budget will be protected from deficit. In 2019, Kuwait suffered a 17.5% budget deficit.
When we meet with Kuwaiti officials, they all agree that oil is a limited natural resource and noted that by making investments in future generations, they maintain the country's sustainable development. Are there any good practices that Mongolia can adopt from Kuwait?
Энэ баялгаа зарцуулах туршилгаас та бас Монгол улс та авчгаар тийм санааг олж харж байна.
Kuwait бол дэлхийн 3-т орж байгаа олборлогч орн. Тэгээ нөөцөөр бол дэлхийн 9-т орж байгаа. Тэгээ ерөнхийдөө
Kuwait is the third largest oil extracting country in the world. It ranks in 9th place in terms of its oil reserves. It generates almost 95% of its economy from oil revenue. The country has no taxes. They not only extract oil, but the oil is processed. Then a finished product is produced and distributed to end users. They not only extract, but also operate more than 4,000 gas stations in 75 countries through its national oil company and its subsidiaries. In other words, they generate revenue at every stage, beginning from oil extraction to final products.
Besides the state of Kuwait, in how many countries do you represent Mongolia as part of your diplomatic mission?
Би Kuwait улсаас гадна булангийн хамтын ажиллагааны зөвлөлийн бусад бүх орныг хариуцж байгаа. Авсан сууж байгаа. Энд болохоор ямар улсууд байгаа бол Сауди Араб, Bahrain.
I represent Mongolia in 6 countries in the Gulf region, including the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and Oman. These countries all have one integrated customs systems and tax system, and in the future, they are planning to issue one regional currency. However, their foreign policies vary. Kuwait is more concentrated on neutrality, while Saudi Arabia conducts more policies directed at Muslim countries. Saudi Arabia's territory is relatively larger than Kuwait's, and it has a population of 30 million people. It prioritizes becoming a leading country in the region. The United Arab Emirates and Qatar conduct soft loan policies that facilitate stronger foreign relations. Oman plays the role of mediator between Saudi Arabia and Iran. All these countries have their own particular priorities and interests.
How many Mongolians reside in the Gulf region?
According to our census, around 100 people reside in 6 countries in the region. The majority, 51 people, reside in the Emirates.
And in Kuwait?
The embassy staff, another Mongolian family, 2 students, and 1 Mongolian married to a local currently reside in Kuwait. Then, in second place, for the number of Mongolian expatriates, there is Qatar, then Bahrain, Oman, and Saudi Arabia. In the last 3 countries, there are 2 or 3 people. Two students from Mongolia are studying at the Arabic Language and Culture Center on Kuwaiti government scholarships. Two students are studying at a university in the United Arab Emirates on government grants. One student is studying on a Qatari government scholarship, and there are a couple more students who cover tuition themselves.
Will the number of scholarship recipients be increased in the future?
Of course, we are interested in increasing the number of grants. We do conduct negotiations on this matter, but it will also depend on the capacity of the respondent countries.
What kind of activities are planned for the diplomatic anniversary celebration?
We have just conducted a consultative meeting. After that, we will hold the second Intergovernmental Commission meeting. In terms of economic ties, we have already submitted our project proposals. It's a soft loan proposal for construction of a paved road between Datal and Underhang. We agreed that further negotiations will be held on this matter. In terms of cultural activities, Mongolian Culture Days will be organized in April. The Fine Art Gallery, Nord Art, will display an anniversary exhibition. We see that we can expand our friendly relations for cooperation in a wider range of sectors. There is the possibility of adopting a visa waiver between our countries. In addition, the national carriers of Qatar and the United Arab Emirates have expressed interests in operating direct flights to Mongolia. We believe that that's possible. With direct flights, we expect growth in economic and trade ties.
Thank you for providing so much information on Mongolia-Kuwait relations.
Thank you for the invitation.
That was Mr. Chintushig, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Mongolia to Kuwait. Arunchi Victor reporting from the Embassy of Mongolia. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye.